The Republican nominee in Georgia's super close race for governor wants the FBI to investigate alleged hacking by Democrats. Brian Kemp is also Georgia's Secretary of State. His office says in a statement, "We opened an investigation into the Democratic Party of Georgia after receiving information from our legal team about failed efforts to breach the online voter registration system." Georgia Democrats say the allegations are false. Kemp didn't mention the issue during President Trump's political rally in Macon, Georgia yesterday, but made a last-minute plea to voters.
I cannot do this without you. The radical left is pouring millions into Georgia. They're energized. They're energized. They're mobilized. They're itching. They are itching you all to turn Georgia into California.
Stacey Abrams is the Democratic candidate for governor and former House Minority Leader for the State Assembly. She's with us from Savannah. We invited Secretary of State Kemp to appear, and he declined. Good morning, Stacey Abrams. I want to start with these allegations which revolve around an email exchange. Has the FBI or Homeland Security contacted your campaign or the Democratic Party, as far as you know?
They have not. And let's be clear. Brian Kemp was informed of this flaw in his security system on Friday. He failed to act and instead on Sunday, without any evidence, decided to try to cast aspersions on Democrats. We have nothing to do with this. This is yet another example of his failure to secure the information of more than 6 million voters. He has failed at this twice already. And we know that when he gets caught, he blames everyone else. This lack of accountability is not evidence of anything other than his failure to do his job. There is no evidence. There's not even a conversation about Democrats having anything to do with this, other than learning along with everyone else that Brian Kemp had failed once again to be the effective Secretary of State.
Do you think it's going to affect the vote come Tuesday?
What I think will happen is that once again, this shows a pattern of voter suppression on the part of Brian Kemp, trying to scare people out of casting their votes. But we've been working hard for 18 months to increase the sense of security that people should have about our democracy writ large. And we know the best antidote to voter suppression is voter engagement. And that's why we're excited about the overwhelming number of people who've turned out in early voting already in Georgia. And we intend to see them there on Election Day.
Are you concerned about the fairness of this election?
I'm concerned that there is someone seeking advancement to higher office, having failed to do his fundamental job as the guardian of the public trust of our democracy. Brian Kemp does not deserve a promotion. However, I'm not going to focus on him alone. I'm focusing on the voters of Georgia, talking about education, about jobs, about expanding Medicaid, because if they will cast their ballots and voice their concerns about these issues, we will have a fair election because so many of us will vote. There will be no question about the outcome.
You know, President Trump, as you know, Stacey Abrams campaigned in Macon, Georgia yesterday. He said this about you, described you as one of the most extreme left-wing opponents, saying that if you put Stacey in there, you'll have Georgia turn into Venezuela. So how are you dealing with comments like that about you and your campaign?
I tell people to look at my record. I'm the only candidate in this race who's worked across the aisle, who's gotten A ratings from the Georgia Chamber of Commerce and the Friend of Labor Award. I'm the only one with detailed plans on how we improve access to education in the state of Georgia, how we cover 500,000 people with access to affordable health care, and how we create good-paying jobs across the state of Georgia. My opponent doesn't have a record. What he has is rhetoric and failed policies and failed behavior. And so I think when people look at my record and they look at my plans, they will know that I'm the only candidate who has their best interest at heart.
But as you know, voters don't often do a deep dive. They look at the headlines, and Brian Kemp is saying about you that this is a farce, this is a distraction. There are countercharges back and forth. What do you do to keep people focused who are just sort of sick of both sides now at this point?
Well, I would say this. I think that what's happened over the last few months is that Brian Kemp has consistently behaved in a way that is not worthy of this office. And what voters have seen is not a back and forth. They've seen one person who throws out desperate attacks, who has to basically blame everyone else for his failures. And I've run a consistent campaign. I've never pointed a shotgun at anyone. I've never blown anything up. I've been talking about the same 3 issues since the day I launched this campaign. Good jobs, good health care, and good education for our kids.
Referring there to images that Brian Kemp had in his campaign. But Stacey Abrams, you said there's no evidence, but isn't the Kemp campaign pointing to an email exchange in which there was discussion of vulnerabilities in the state's system? Isn't that what they're saying is the evidence?
So let's be clear. There was an email sent by our voter protection division to cybersecurity folks, because they'd received this information. And we did the right thing, which is we got information that there was a vulnerability. We sent it to cybersecurity folks because it's the voter protection division of our campaign. But the issue was that Brian Kemp was told about this days before and did nothing to alert the public to the fact that there was another flaw in the system he's responsible for overseeing. And instead of addressing the flaw and taking responsibility, he decided to go to a desperate place and blame Democrats for simply alerting cybersecurity experts to his failure.
Okay, Stacey Abrams, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you. Again, we invited Secretary of State Brian Kemp to appear, and he declined our invitation.